Oops. Now to our traditional town hall meeting where anything is up for discussion. In the past, we've discussed how scientists can communicate better to the public, how we can help you, how you can help us by training the next generation. In the last few years, we discussed a lot politics and the effects of the recession, and it's been pretty dismal. Things are, I hope, a little better, and it would be nice if we didn't get too bogged down in describing how awful it is. I don't really have any agenda. I think I'll ask our speakers, you've heard from two of them already, wonderful talks, to make any comments they have, and then we'll open it up for discussion, and I'm sure there'll be a lot to talk about. You can even ask science questions. I will just say, because a bunch of people have already asked me, one, no, neutrinos do not travel faster than the speed of light. And if we're lucky, we'll discover how opera screwed up. But maybe not, doesn't know. And two, yes, the Higgs has been discovered. At least I believe it has been discovered. But before we get started, I'd like Dan Hone to describe the current status of our, one of the things we've been doing, as you know, and many of you contributed, brilliant course material based on this conference that we put out on the web and is available to all of you and to anyone. And that's been a great success. Dan, do you want to describe the current status?
Well, as you've heard, this has been a very successful series of teachers' conferences. We're delighted to have you here. And we hope to extend the impact of it even further. And one way, of course, is if you and others can go back to your classrooms and make use of what you've heard here. And to that end, over the past 4 years, we've run something called the RAB contest, a contest to have you put together on the basis of what you hear here a PowerPoint presentation that you, the people who come to the conference and other teachers around the country can use to make use of the material that has been presented here at the conference. And through a generous gift from Simon Diana Rab, over the past 4 years, we've actually been able to offer monetary prizes for the winners. And in fact, the winners of the contest last year are on this sheet, which I think all of you have in your packets, and you have their pictures, and they're all, in fact, here today. We have, unfortunately, now exhausted this generous gift from the Rabs, but I've already been asked by a couple people here if we might basically continue the contest, though we can't offer monetary prizes. We can offer you a nice certificate, a generous letter of commendation from the director of the Institute, which perhaps the administrators of your schools will appreciate and may result in some monetary benefit there. But in any case, people say they've enjoyed putting together these PowerPoint presentations, so we're going to try to actually continue the contest. We will try to judge any presentations that people, in fact, submit to us, and then put the winners on the website where you and others can access them.
Let me just add a bit to that. I do hope that people will continue to make such contributions. Do we know how many people use these?
There's tremendous number of hits on the website, on the print. We don't know, of course.
Well, we know how many people download them.
We know how many people look at them and download them. What, of course, we can't measure is how many actually use them in the classrooms.
But anyway, I just want to put in a pitch for doing this without immediate payoff of prize money. I mean, it is nice to get prizes, right? But believe me, that's not why we do science. And it really is incidental. And well, we do like something, and we will give you what most scientists get most of the time, which is recognition, citations. So scientists don't complain about the fact that they didn't get a prize for their wonderful contribution that they made last week, but they do complain when they're not cited. So we will cite all these contributions that we think are the best, and we will put them out there, and that's more important to us at least than money. So I do hope this continues. I think the ones that have been prepared for this contest have been fantastic, and they really can be greatly beneficial. One thing we can do to spread this wonderful science that you're hearing in a form that's appropriate for a class. Right. So let me see whether there's anyone on the panel who wants to say something. Otherwise, we'll turn to the discussions between you and you and you and us and you. So we could start with Eva. You pass. That's all right. Andre, Herb.
My 17-year-old daughter is actually taking physics in high school right now. And she really likes her teacher, so I've been very happy about that. I've met him, but I have to admit I haven't observed him in class. But she reports that he's really great. And I've been following what she's been doing in their textbook, and I've been very impressed with kind of how mature a lot of it is, and also how similar it is to things that I do in my own introductory physics class for the non-calculus-based level. It's so much slower, but it's the same material. So I've been kind of interested in seeing if it's possible to learn sort of from one another, useful ways of teaching the material to the students. For us in the classroom, so I have to teach a very large lecture, and it's a little bit difficult to do active learning types of activities. But when I've had smaller lectures, I've tried to do that as much as possible. And so I'm interested in seeing if there are such activities that one can do that could be implemented in this sort of larger format.
Penny, you want to say? Okay.
Yeah, sometimes I like to tell stories, doing this much better than giving presentations. So we do need very much teachers, because I'm afraid that the world around us is not perfect, and people do really suffer without education and so on. The story I want to tell you, starting first with the story I heard about one of senators from Texas. Maybe it's anecdotal evidence, but apparently he was very against putting Spanish lessons as obligatory curriculum in the schools, because his argument was, if Jesus spoke English, why do we need Spanish? So, okay, I thought it would be sort of a representative of Texas culture, but in Europe.
Most from Texas are like that, though.
Okay, yeah. But Texas teachers probably have to do a little bit more work than in other states, yeah. Anyways, that's anecdotal evidence. Less anecdotal evidence, what I recently encountered speaking to some science ministers, not Texas senators, but science ministers in Europe. And it really takes this level to realize how important teachers are. So at a dinner table, speaking to several of those from different countries, they obviously wondered what I was doing. Okay, I could imagine at this time that going through these lecture notes you heard before would be no good at all, so word graphene wouldn't be a reference. So I told them, you just discussed how important is Twitter and Facebook. I'm one of the guys who is very low down the chain trying this to work. You need computers, you need mobile phones, you need processors, and processors need transistors. And I'm one of those who try to make those transistors smaller and faster and smaller and faster. And while I was still carrying on, one of the ministers sort of interjected in a sort of a patronizing manner, saying, "You shouldn't be worrying about this. Isn't there the Moore's law which tells us that every 18 years you will get smaller and faster computers?" I had no moral strength left to explain to her that Moore's law is not a law of nature, whatever her physics teacher told her. So we do need physics teachers.
Well, let's. What do you want to say? Something?
Maybe I'll say one thing really quick. I teach. I'm actually in engineering now, even though my background is in physics, and I teach an introductory engineering kind of a mechanics course. And one of the things I notice is that I've now learned to give a little bit of a lecture in the beginning of the class that I think about half of you guys are going to have a real problem in this class because you've survived physics in high school and your physics undergraduate class by doing the following. You're asked some questions. You're asked a question about, let's say, a projectile motion question. It has acceleration, distance, time, velocity. And what you do is you go look and you say, all right, acceleration is A, distance is D, velocity is V. This is familiar here. And you go to your formula sheet and you find the formula that has all those letters on it. And then you plug in the numbers corresponding to those letters, and usually you get the right answer. And I tell them, you are going to die in my class because you get one more level of complexity. There just aren't enough unique symbols for everything. You just have to actually know what it's about. So I think this is, a continuous problem that, I hope everybody is working on. I'm still working on the college level, trying to get people to really understand things on a conceptual level, but I still be able to express it mathematically as well. So I hope we can help you with that on some of our crazy graphene stuff.
Actually, I thought of something I wanted to ask you your opinions about. Recently, I got a request to lend my name to some project which is going to impact all of the high schools eventually, which is material that people are putting out there for free. So this was a project that I was asked about that Rice University is involved in, people from Rice, to provide free college textbooks. Their idea is that this would be sort of like free source code projects on the internet. And very serious project, I gather. I'm not sure I'm going to lend my name to it, but I have to see what it is first. But these books, college textbooks, are big. They're extraordinarily expensive. Anyway, they want to provide something which will cost nothing to the students or teachers, and print it on demand for $20 a volume. I have, and various universities, MIT, Yale, et cetera, are putting college courses out on the web with even problem sets and tutoring sessions and even some certification MIT is providing. Well, this is now mostly aimed at the college level introductory courses, but given the fact, the budget crisis, and this is going to impact high schools as well. And I'm interested in your reaction to that. It'll affect teaching in universities. It'll affect teaching in high schools. It's coming. It's being supported by foundations, and it's of great interest to the federal government to save money, eliminate jobs. That's our jobs, or our colleagues' jobs, and increase efficiency, increase availability in underdeveloped countries who can't afford $200 textbooks in introductory physics. Anyway, that's the idea, but there are a lot of questions it gave rise to in my mind, and what would you guys think of having a free high school textbooks in science, physics, in order to help reduce the costs for your school districts? Anyway, many interesting questions associated with that. Eva, did you want to say something?
From my teacher friends, I hear that the curriculum in the U.S. is getting more and more I would like to hear your opinion about this. It's getting more and more structured, and the student and teachers have so little time left beyond their everyday duties to think out of the box, and as a result to encourage their students to think out of the box. And it is such an important asset for students to be trained to think, to be trained to attack problems. And I just wanted to hear your opinion about this issue, and if it is, how can we get around and to improving it?
Can I add to that? So actually, some of us were having discussions yesterday over lunch about recruiting. When we bring graduate students into our labs, many of them have very, very high GPAs from every country in the world. They've done very well, but certainly you need to be strong academically to succeed as a PhD. But you also need common sense and the ability to think outside the box, or just not to follow a set program. And we were talking about how do you how do you test for common sense? Right? What do you give them at the beginning? Is there some task you could give incoming students starting their PhD program to say, do you have any common sense whatsoever? If not, you'll have to be a theorist.
Make sure we teach common sense. We want everybody to have common sense.
Yeah, so that was where my rambling was leading, actually, is that I think certainly at your level is where all of the common sense hopefully gets implanted, and I think certainly what Eva was talking about, that fundamental, just why am I doing what I'm doing and what does it mean, ultra important, and if they don't have that, they're never gonna. Doesn't matter if they can get 100s on every test, they're never gonna do well in graduate school or research, things like that.
Okay, let's open it up to all of you. I'll pass you, and there's a mic back there. Choose a mic.
Okay. Wow, lots of questions. I think to one of your statements, teaching in high school, they need to get the wonder of it and the hands-on and the playfulness of it in elementary school. By the time they get to us, we can try, but the problem is I think in elementary education, I don't want to stereotype. I think elementary teachers are elementary teachers because they didn't do well in science and math. They're afraid of math. I mean, most of the elementary teachers I know, they don't know enough science to really communicate the wonder, the exploratory portions of it. And I think that's so strengthening elementary education, and when they get to us, they have the hands-on, oh, that's fun, let's do this. As far as your question about how do you get them to do hands-on, I think most of my students, the 25% who, you tell them, they say, okay, give me the problems. But we're doing conservation momentum, so I have them in rolling chairs, pushing off on one another. I get to try to visualize, because for me, you give me a formula, I'm okay with it, but I don't know what the hell it means. Okay, but if you show it to me and show me what's happening and then explain it to me in some visual way, which most students are specifically now visual learners, they're much more likely. So we try to do hands-on, throwing baseballs, throwing footballs, shooting stuff in the air, things like that, to get them to understand that. And it helps. I really truly think, especially for people who are not going to be physicists. I think that's probably the key thing is physicists, give me a formula, baby, I'm going to solve it. It's like, give me 10 problems just like it. Thank you.
I have to say something about the common sense. I have two children, complete polar opposites. One of them is going to limbo under the bar to make it through Arizona State University. With a 2.1 GPA, we're going to limbo, okay? We are holding our breath. That's my son. Always hated school. My daughter, more like me. My daughter's the 4.0 AP honor student. Every one of her classes is AP. She is having an entirely different experience in high school. However, as she says, Mom, the worst part are my students in my class because we don't have any fun. She's in all the AP classes. They don't do projects. They don't do creative things because they are AP. So we're kind of self-selecting, and when you're always going for the best and the top and the best and the top, you are getting kids like this. You are getting kids. You're seeing a subset of what we're seeing in our classroom when you're always going for that top echelon, because those classes, the demands of the AP classes are such that it has removed what I think most of us are doing in most of our classes. So, when it comes to common sense, my daughter will laugh and she'll say, when we go on a field trip, I'm the only one that knows how to open the door, Mom. She's like, God. And I'll be like, you gonna date any guys? She goes, have you seen the guys in my class? And I accompanied them on something, and I was just like, oh dear God, and China was busy talking, they were sitting there, so it really is. I think what you're seeing is, and it's a sad comment, I think, also in our high schools, because they come to the teachers, oh, you're very smart, you need to teach the AP, and they've shifted the teachers up, they've shifted the demands up, and the other classes are struggling. Not only are the students, but, that's my little common sense for you. But I would also suggest that you go for some diversity and start looking at those kids that are not doing well, because they may have absolutely the most to offer. They may be what you are looking for that will stimulate those others that already work well within the system. I have a lot of students that do not do well that are incredibly bright. And it's so sad because I know what their future is. They're not getting scholarships. They're not getting the offers. Because all the universities want, we want the top, we want the top, we want the AP, we want the AP. So maybe, a mixture. If you want common sense, you could put some of the regular students in with the ones that you have in your labs, okay?
Thank you. Over here? Let's get some stuff from them.
Hi, Sean Kelly. I'm a high school teacher as well. I teach physics and chemistry. And what I found that I think is the most important thing is to get the kids in the lab and doing experimentation. I just think that that's the way that you lock in the theory of physics and chemistry. It's the experience of putting it in practice and seeing that it actually works. Now, one really cool thing for me is I have the kids, we don't do it in high school very often, but do a science fair, do a science project, and do research for themselves. And one huge issue that I'm dealing with is how expensive scientific literature is. So I have a student who wants to make transparent crab shells. It's an awesome, neat project about material. The article is $50. What am I going to do? I can't afford for one student $50. How can I afford for my 300 students? What do you guys think about open, peer-reviewed literature and moving in that direction?
For us, it's all open. We get it free. Our libraries pay for it, or the university pays for it. And that indeed should be That's absurd. This is usually public financed research. It's outrageous. What journal was that?
Stop, Mr. Root. Stop now.
Hi, Woody Maxwell from Ventura. A couple of things. First off, I'm going to brag. We've won the Ventura County Science Fair the last 8 years in a row for the Perpetual Trophy, and that is a huge problem to get, is trying to get peer-reviewed journals. And you can get older ones, but the kids will see stuff and know they can't read necessarily the academic language, but there's some good background information. And because I work up here in the summer, I can get some of it, but it would be really nice on our library to have the same benefit you have here. Click on, oh, cool. Now I can't use the whole thing, but it'd be really nice, and then it would push it. I have noticed also that some of my lower students who failed ChemCom with me, which is the lowest high school chemistry, I've seen in labs up here doing graduate work. And about that common sense thing, they have to know why they're doing this stuff. And it's amazing to watch some of my honor students who are just like clueless in a lab because they've been trained. And here's the problem is, comes back to what she said, they're trained that there's an answer. And they've been trained that there's an answer, and they're going to get the right answer every time because they want A's, because they want to go to the good schools. But I hurt them and make them think, well, there's a number of answers to some of these questions, and you have to figure it out. And they get all upset at me. One girl was really upset last week. I said, hey, when you get to university and you have to figure something out, you'll be able to. Oh. So they're trained from an early age to get the right answer. And then the free textbooks would be awesome because it would save us thousands per year. And one last thing, Common Core standards, which is California state standards, just cramps all free thinking.
Here.
Dave, about your point there, about the open source textbooks and such. One of the things, my school just went to a program this year. We're piloting, we're trying it out, and because we didn't have to spend any money on textbooks because we went to an open source for the materials, that freed up a lot of money in our budget for lab supplies. So we were able to go from literally 17th century, labs to 20th century, 21st century data collection, where the kids are spending more time, in the lab, doing things, understanding the physics, getting that real world, that physicality to it, and it's not just a formula. Common sense is learned in the lab. That's the thing. If the kids you want kids who can do things in the lab, you got to look at their transcripts, see who's taking laboratory sciences and not AP sciences, because really the AP sciences, my curriculum says 13 labs in the AP in the year, and the AP people, the College Board, approved my syllabus with 13 labs, and I think that's way not near enough to even teach the physicality of it. But because their curriculum says you got to cover all these things for this test in May, and we start in September, we're beating a deadline. Ignore the AP.
I just wanted to answer David's question about free textbooks for high school. If you go to ck12.org, they have a lot of free material. The other solution that we've done in our school, we're an independent school in New York City, we write our own textbooks now, and we don't even call them textbooks, it's just reference material for our students. Our students very much they don't want to wait until chapter 27 to find out what's in chapter 27 if it relates to chapter 5. So because of that, we just decided as we move forward in our science curriculum, we're eliminating our textbooks completely and writing our own material. And we think from our students' perspective, that's the best thing for them. Thank you.
So for everyone, free textbooks is a great way to save money? Fantastic. What do you think about free teachers? No, seriously, online, great teachers, teaching your courses and reducing the teaching staff, which is being reduced anyway. I am not expecting it.
Hello. I have really enjoyed everything being said now, and I want to add my cent. And I was inspired by what Professor Geim said in the beginning, that he started working on the fun stuff on Friday nights. And it sort of relates to what I'm going to say right now. About 7 years ago, I work at an independent school in Studio City, in LA area, and part-time at UCLA. And then I started this research program at the school. But I asked the administration to allow the students to do that during their school hours, not after school, not just over weekends or Friday nights, but actually during the school hours. And the program has been very successful. And that's one of the things I like to share with those who are frustrated maybe with AP Physics or something. I teach AP Physics. I'm also frustrated about that. But this program has been successful because the students who have taken the class, many of them have gone up to graduate schools, getting a PhD now. And also we've had enormous support from wealthy families. We started this big research institute there, all with money from families of students who took the class. So one of the things I felt like maybe if we were to change the culture a little bit by introducing a small student research course, but during the school hours, maybe the students will see that this is as important as an AP Physics B class. Because I always felt like having something done after hours, it kind of puts like on a secondary level. It just says, look, this is not as important as AP. But I guess this program has proven that they are equally important. And so I know that everybody does wonderful things after school and weekend and summer. But if we join forces to change a little bit the culture of the nation, that to allow students to do research during the school hours. So I'll stop right now because I know a lot of people wanted to ask questions. Thank you.
Okay. Right. Just wanted to say two things. One, to the university freshman classes, large lectures, and what to do to make them a little more interactive. Some of you may know I am a modeler. I admit it. I'm not a recovering modeler. I'm going to stay one. But they do a lot of work with the universities. Eric Moser at Harvard, his peer interaction. I mean, those things do help. And also for about getting the right formula, that really speaks true to my heart because when they say, Miss, what's the formula? I know they don't understand it. And so they have to derive everything graphically for me in my physics class. And I also teach the freshman engineering class for the university in high school. And the thing that frustrates me the most is my kids don't, and I think it's generational, do not have experience with stuff, that it's too virtual. And I say this as a computer geek, okay? They need to get outside more, and they just don't play. I do not want my students ever to be caught on film at graduation with a battery bulb and a wire and not know how to make it light.
I just wanted to say that you can get free journals from the American Physical Society. Just ask your librarian to request it, and then every high school, I think, in the United States can get free APS journals.
Yeah, that's probably true. APS journals you can get free because the APS is a professional society and has a responsibility. I think you're probably referring to a private journal which soaks the libraries and is predatory, and it's vulture publishing.
I wanted to make a comment about what do you do in a huge lecture hall. I mean, nothing beats labs, but so you have 300 students, you're looking at them. Why shouldn't every third student get a little piece of whiteboard? And you tell them, now let's see if you've understood. You ask them a very direct, practical question. You know, how does an airplane wing work? Turn to your two neighbors, the three of you work on this. You've got 5 minutes. Show me your boards. Pick out some boards. Explain what you just did. That's much more interactive, and you get a sense of those people who are good students in the sense that they can look up the answer in the back of the book, and those who are extraordinary thinkers. You know, that's a small sort of suggestion.
Do you try that? Does it work?
Yeah. More than it does.
Lisa O'Brien from Poway in San Diego. So again, for the large lecture group, I do the whiteboards also. And another thing, if you have them for vectors and simple questions, if they draw an arrow, an X, and a dot on 3 pieces of paper, and then you ask them things like, what direction is the vector pointing, and they hold it in front of their chest, and you can look at the whole audience and all the arrows in the wrong direction, then you say, check your neighbor, and they just look, So there are a couple of things that you can do for a large group. Or you could have lab materials and say, everyone with a green shirt on today, come on down in front and do this lab. And they never know who's going to be doing it on a different day. For the free texts, I don't think they're going to replace science teachers. We pay for our texts, and my students still don't understand them. So whether they pay or not, they still need a teacher to help them with that. And parents aren't going to sit at home making sure the students are online doing the work. So they're still going to pay at least some teachers to be babysitters. So we'll still have some jobs left. I also teach AP Physics, regular physics, and physics for non-English speakers. So I teach the gamut. And my AP class, I have just as much hands-on labs as in my sheltered physics class. I think it's crucial that you do that. I still have like a 93% pass rate on the AP test at the end of the year. So you can do it through labs and make sure that they're learning the content and have open-ended things. I have a project where they go to a local playground and they analyze the physics. It's open-ended. They make the procedure. They figure out the coefficient of friction. They come back and present. And the beauty of it last week when they were presenting is they figure out that in the real world it doesn't work like you think it might. A lot of times I had students, I don't know why, but we got friction pointing the wrong way according to energy conservation. And then they analyze each other's work and figure out where they went wrong and what parts were good about that. So they can be very inventive. And I do think the common sense needs to be a little earlier on. We need more open-ended science at elementary. So we need people comfortable with science teaching at elementary school, which doesn't happen very often because they get to me and can't think. I say, you have something measured in kilograms. What's the something? Time? They're guessing. They know it's multiple choice, and it's either time, mass, or acceleration. I don't know which one. I think that's it.
Hi. I just wanted to, follow up a little bit on the last point, answering Dave's question. I think the real value that teachers add is that it's a human profession. Like we're all science folks and like numbers, presumably. But they're not going to get it from the textbooks, and the younger the students get, the more they need somebody who's not Watson trying to win on Jeopardy, understanding what they're getting wrong, the small subtle clues, and trying to figure out what's going to make them work. And it's, we come up with all kinds of exotic theories about what kind of learners they are. But, every day is different, every student's different, right? And it takes a lot of work. And I think sometimes the large lecture hall format masks that, and to the extent that it became the dominant university model, that becomes a problem. But for those of you who have graduate students, you also then realize again that they're 22 and they still don't know what's going on. So.
I think. Everyone should identify themselves. I should have said that.
Hakan Arman from Omaha, Nebraska, physics and nuclear science teacher. I think the point that you made, which Dr. Gross, is that just as the teachers need to be compensated for their work, I think that authors should be compensated for their work. That's writing a book. It's not an easy thing, and so I'm glad you brought that point. So I have to think that both sides of the aisle, not just the one side. Thank you.
Art Altschiller. I'm retired, but I was a
physics teacher. I do a little community college teaching still. From my recollection, just 2 days ago, I'll just mention this. I was at the CES conference in Las Vegas, and they have a, you might call it a robot, but it's Verizon Wireless. It's put out a platform that rotates. It will move on wheels, and it will move wherever you want it to. And it has a display. And somebody in Massachusetts, when I saw it, was conversing with any of the conference participants. And the intention of it is to monitor hospitals or classrooms. So conceivably, devices like this, may basically be available. Like, say, a teacher had a lab, and it were a little more advanced, or somebody wanted a second, take on what was going on. You could have a connection between the high school level and the college level with this little thing going around each particular row of the lab and discussing things with someone. On the other hand, I really agree with this gentleman right here. I think we are basically, in the humane domain of wanting to work in sort of small units with people to people, and that's how we really tend to learn. And so I think a combination of all of this, and I mean, common sense is great, but also, I hate to say, I have to give this quote up, just too much of it. I think it was Bertrand Russell that said common sense is vague, cocksure, and self-contradictory. So don't overdo common sense. Sometimes a little bit of just thinking helps.
My name is Gail Van Eckeren, and I teach most of my career. I've taught urban students. I'm currently in Orange, New Jersey. In answer to this gentleman's questions about what to do to get them not to just fill in formulas, I found two things particularly helpful. One is the work out of University of Minnesota on group problem solving. They have online a lot of context-rich problems where they don't give all of the information. Sometimes they give you too much information, and they're a lot of fun, and that's one source. The other would be out of University of Delaware, their problem-based learning. And again, they have a lot of different things available for free right online. And I do the analysis of a car crash, depending on they have one for two-dimensional, one for one for one-dimensional, one for two-dimensional available, as well as others. I recommend those sources. And for getting students who were better in lab areas, I've been involved with FIRST Robotics for over 10 years. And those students learn amazing things. Even the kids who don't have the good grades are their talents just come out, because not all of people's talents are reflected in their grade point average, as you know.
We're going to the one.
All right. I got one question. I'll point out that in your case, if you think the students are bad now, wait till the next 10 years of test-based curriculum hits you guys. You are in for a world of hurt. I have to ask this, Andre, because as my friends would inform you, I have the right to remain silent, but not the ability. I can imagine how you felt when you were notified you received the Nobel Prize, but how did you feel when you were notified you'd won the Ig Nobel Prize?
It works differently, okay? But seriously speaking, okay, people approach you a week or two in advance and say, do you like this price or not? And then you have a lot of thinking to do. Whether you have enough courage to do, but I thought I have to take it, otherwise I would betray myself, my own personality, to being outspoken and so on. Okay. Ignoble, if you don't have a sense of humor. I know many people who have a great sense of humor when they talk about their colleagues, but not about
Okay, the food is ready. I think we will adjourn, but we can continue this over tables.